Action. Welcome to Paul's old ass movie classic. Excuse me. Still learning the name, guys. And today I'm joined, of course, with Drew Stewart, my partner in crime in this podcast. Thank you, Drew.
Of course, happy to be here.
And today we went a little different this route. This is probably one of the bigger names in terms of films that we reviewed so far. I mean, this is definitely one of considered a classic, and a lot of film savants have definitely seen this one. I believe this is on the AFI top 100 list.
I want to say it's like in the top 10.
It might be. Yeah, it's fairly high. Drew, if you want to look that up while I kind of go over some numbers
Yeah.
here. But this is a highly ranked movie, and I've seen it before, but it's been a while. And so I wanted to see it again, and definitely with a different lens. And that's a big reason why we're watching it today. And Drew hadn't seen it, and so yeah, that's why we're going to check it out today. But this movie was made in 1957. You can watch it now on AMC Plus if you have that subscription, Criterion channel, or of course you can always rent it from one of your favorite Apple or Amazon, wherever you get your favorite movie rentals.
I
This is
love it. It's 36, but still top 50.
Yeah, pretty high. This is directed by David Lean, who also directed Lawrence of Arabia and Dr. Zhivago. And this is written by Pierre Boulle, who also wrote the Planet of the Apes novel. But he does not speak English, but yet he got credited for the screenplay. He won the Best Adapted Screenplay Award. But we found out later, of course, that Carl Foreman and Michael Wilson both wrote this film, but they were blacklisted at the time. Carl Foreman's also known for High Noon and The Guns of Navarone. And then Michael Wilson also wrote Lawrence of Arabia. But they were both, I believe, reinstated in 1984, I believe I just read. And so, yeah, so they ended up getting credit. But Michael Wilson never got credit while he was alive. He died, I think, a year before. And Carl Foreman died the day after, apparently, that he got the credit for it.
No
So,
way. He could
yeah.
finally give up.
Yeah. This, of course, stars Alec Guinness, who you might know as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and William Holden, who's in a ton of movies, Jack Hawkins as well. And then Colonel Saito is played by Sessue Hayakawa, and you may recognize his face. He also starred in Swiss Family Robinson. He was like the main pirate. So this, again, kind of a bigger film. Premise of this movie: British POWs are forced to build a railway bridge across the River Kwai for their Japanese captors in occupied Burma, not knowing that the Allied forces are planning a daring commanding raid to jungle to destroy it. This has an 8.1 IMDb rating, very high. Budget 3 million, gross 27 million. So, with all of that, Drew, what would you say is your favorite thing about this film?
Oh,
Or
so
just give your overall impressions too. Yeah.
yeah. I'm still thinking about it actually, in terms of how I feel about it. It's hard when you come into a film that is so widely acknowledged as one of the greatest movies ever, maybe
Yeah.
the greatest war film ever. I don't want to say that I come in looking to like find fault, but I come in, I don't know, with just such heightened expectations that it's tricky.
Yeah.
So and part of it is, and this is my own fault, and I've said this on a couple of movies, I got to figure out a way to sit and watch a movie in one sitting. Admittedly, this one's really long.
This is tough to watch in one sitting.
So 2 hours and 40 minutes is a long time to sit. So I do wonder, like, to what extent, like, chopping it up makes me sometimes struggle with movies, but I liked it. Do I think it's the greatest war movie I've ever seen? I don't know that I do. I think that a lot of the performances are excellent.
And I would
Um,
even struggle to call it a war movie, to be honest. I feel like it's a wartime movie, kind of like Casablanca,
yeah,
because I know Casablanca's in these war movie things, but there's zero war about them,
totally.
right? They just
I
take place
almost,
during war.
yeah, and I almost put Casablanca in our list later, but I chose not to because of that. I would say
Yeah,
this is a little more warish than that because there's
sure.
some actual, like, a little bit of like fighting. But anyway, I agree with you. It's more of just like a human drama, if you will.
Yeah, sure.
But I liked it. I thought that so I guess my two things that I took away from it that I liked the most, I thought several of the performances were really good. Alec Guinness he's just that guy. I mean, he just has that. charisma, that it factor, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I thought he was excellent. Some of the other characters were excellent. And then I love this how you however you want to frame this, like the cinematography slash like the setting. Like the fact that
Yeah.
they were actually out in the jungle, on the river, filming it on location. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it added a ton when they're like taking, swimming in the river through the rapids, like all of it, I thought, from a cinematography and setting standpoint was breathtaking, actually, in certain parts.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm with you on this. I could see why it's highly acclaimed. I definitely, like you're saying, the cinematography, the setting, the performances are great. Um, I do think this movie is just way too long. I mean, I watched it kind of like one and a half times, and at some point I'm just like, okay, get into it. Okay, get into it. And it's like even the second time I just kind of felt the same way. And so I was trying to think like
It was
how,
like it was like the Valachi papers that we watched recently. Like, come on, get to the good stuff, because then
yeah,
it got more exciting, got better.
yeah, and like like a rule of thumb is you got to capture within the first 10 minutes, and this movie I'd argue doesn't do that. Like I don't know if I'm buying the script in the first 10 pages because there's zero action that kind of happens and you really don't know a ton of what happens in the first 10 pages and it's really kind of slow going and it's really up and down and
Very confusing.
I feel you can easily cut an hour out of this and no one's going to even blink about it. Because even that like final raid, I think the ending of this movie is one of the best endings that you could see in a movie on how it all ties up, all the characters, all playing out. Like I think that part is fantastic. And so it's definitely, you get the juice at the end of it. But like I said, I just felt like this could have been shortened to get to there. And I think too, like, the movie starts in the prison camp, and trying to I've been trying to rack my head on whether that was the most effective way to tell this story because you don't really know how they got captured.
It wasn't. How are they captured?
Yeah, like
Who's officers versus enlisted guys? Like how many guys is
we
Alec
could have
Guinness
learned.
standing up for?
Yeah, we could have learned more about their characters in a 5-minute war scene to start that movie that we're all, that we're engrossed in versus them just whistling and walking in. And like that's how you start it. And it's just like you could have done it over the credits, the shooting scene, right? I mean, I know that obviously they didn't necessarily think like that back then, but I'm like, that could have been more effective on your credit scene. I don't
They
need to see
spent
people walking for 3 miles in the jungle for 3 minutes while the credits happen. You know what I mean? So I feel like that could have been more effectively done. There just need to be a little more action because I think the drama is there to make this excellent, but this is still a war movie, and I need a little bit of action, like or just some sort of. And when I'm saying action, I'm not saying like Rambo 2, where just people are just getting shot at, but just incidences of activity because again, I think it's just too long. I mean, there's some great conversational scenes, but I don't just speed it up, man. Speed it up.
they
But
spent so much time like teasing out the William Holden character, who's not likable really much at
yeah,
all. In the first segment, I don't know. Yeah, it was confusing. It took way too long. And for all of that, it's still, like I said, like we just said, it was like spent all that time and I still wasn't exactly sure what was happening, like what the setting was, how they ended up there.
yeah,
It was weird.
yeah. Actually, I had to do more research on it because I don't think it really tells you that they're in Burma. Um, I'm trying to remember.
Well, it's hard because like the names are different now. So like at one point you see like Ceylon,
Well, it's shot in what is
Sri
today's Sri
Lanka.
Lanka. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I found that out. But yeah. All right. Well, I don't know if we answered this, but if there's another way you want to word it, does this movie hold up?
Yeah. I mean, I think it does. I think war and the themes in it can be kind of timeless. Like, obviously, it's super interesting seeing, The Colonel's character, Alec Guinness's character, like completely lose perspective, right? Like we need to show everybody the ingenuity of the British Army at the detriment of the British Army when they're trying to blow it up. You know what I mean? So it's like you watch a guy completely lose perspective, whether it's Stockholm syndrome, whether it's his way of coping. He's obviously using the building of the bridge to get his troops to cope with their situation. Um, but all of those, I think, are very interesting themes into the human psyche and into prisoners or prisoners of war, however you want to look at it. So I
Yeah.
think from that perspective, just sort of like the introspection on the human condition, I think is timeless and I think is still certainly very apt today. I actually even think, like I said earlier, like I thought the film was beautifully made. It
Yeah.
did, it didn't feel like a film from the 50s in
No,
terms
no,
of
no.
like it, like I thought it was skillfully directed, cinematography is great, it looked great. So I think from an aesthetic standpoint, it holds up. Um, my only quibbles with it are what we already talked about, sort of the length and lack of development
Yeah.
early on. Like,
And that
I
could be a British thing too, because this is a British filmmaker. And so even, like the Zone of Interest had the same kind of pacing where it's just like,
yeah.
oh man, like,
I feel like a lot of the old Michael Caine films are like that. It takes a while to get in going.
yeah,
So you're right. But anyway, I think it holds up actually. I do. It's not my favorite movie I've ever seen, but I think it's really well done and I think the themes hold up.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to add. I think, like I said, I kind of already said it. I think besides the length, I think, like you're saying, the themes and the character development is excellent. And you can see why it's so revered. Definitely with the production design. Just yeah, just cut it down. Cut it down. I think this movie holds up really well. More marketable, I guess, is a better way to say it.
Yeah.
Contemporary comparison.
So
What?
I was racking my brain and I couldn't, and again, like contemporary for it's hard to find real modern, so going back a couple decades. But contemporary is for me is Saving Private Ryan.
Okay,
And it's I couldn't get away from the war theme, but that's another one
I
that
think
like
that works.
while yes, there's battles, but they're on this like super special different mission. So
Yeah,
like in this case, they're prisoners of war, so they're not exactly on a mission, but they're in this like you said, the setting is war, but they're doing almost anything but. So they're
yeah,
on this special mission to build the bridge, you know. So for me, it's kind of Saving Private Ryan and those parts of war that I think a lot of times we don't, if you haven't served or certainly served overseas, you don't understand are probably large segments of what some people have to do
yeah.
rather than just sort of on the front lines. And so for me, it kind of felt a little bit like Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, I think that's a good comp. And I also think, like, again, talking about pacing, you want to talk about a film that does it properly, that has a similar, deeper discussion on characters and purpose and all that stuff, but then mixes in enough action to move the story along. And I think this movie could have done that, added a few more, not don't add, excuse me, subtracts, yeah, subtract stuff and then replace is the better word.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, my comp in, kind of I also use the 90s. But mine was Crimson Tide, mainly because this
See
was
what you did there.
a large part about philosophical differences on how to approach certain things, and they're not one's not necessarily right, one's not necessarily wrong, and that's I think the epitome of Crimson Tide, and I think that's the greatest movie in terms of coming with that argument is giving both sides in the argument, and it's so well done that you really aren't wrong with either way you choose. However, just like in Crimson Tide, they're both right and they're both wrong, and the ability to find a middle ground is really where the error is. And I think that's Alex Guinness in this film. Luckily, it pays off for him, but in a way, it was too late because it cost many lives before he realized it. So yeah, that'd be my
Including his own.
yeah. I didn't want to spoil it, but
Oh, sorry.
yeah, yeah. But again, the ending of this movie, I think, is really is a fantastic ending, like a really satisfying ending. I think for this film, especially 3 hours later. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm not sure there's ever been a shorter, better payoff for a movie this long than the last 5 minutes. And it's truly the last 5 minutes.
I agree. I
It's
agree.
so good.
This movie's worth it to watch this for the last 5 minutes, even if you fast forward
Yeah.
most of it. All right. Should this movie be remade today, and who should it star?
Do you want I'm
I'm actually I don't think it really should be remade today. Yeah, I'm going to take a different approach on this one just because I think this movie's a little too revered to mess with this one. And yes, can you make it better? Maybe, but I just don't know. I just don't know if it'd be worth it. I don't know. I didn't usually most movies I'm like, yeah, let's do it, and this could be so much better. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
the only thing I was thinking was like, sure, maybe you'd like set it in Vietnam, which is like so hokey of me because it's such a similar Asian
This
setting
is
or
based on a
whatever.
real story, though. That's the only
Yeah.
problem, you know. So it's like, I mean, if you can find something similar and change it, then sure. But yeah, I mean, that takes too much research for me to do that. But
I agree. I feel like this is one that could be left alone. That they
yeah,
don't like, even though we have some quibbles with certain parts of it. I don't know that you're going to make a better film than this, to be honest with you.
yeah, and it's just
If
again,
you're remaking,
and usually some of these remakes sometimes they just don't have the heart that this one did, and this one again is really close to the time period too. So, um, and David Lean, I mean, he is an all timer when it comes to epics and stuff like that. So it's like who you're getting to like it would have to be
well,
someone that really like a high end like I wouldn't say Spielberg because I don't think it's his up his alley, but this would have to
you
be like
do like Terrence Malick, like who did like Thin
yeah,
Red
see, I
Line.
wouldn't want to watch a Terrence Malick remake of this one. He might make it longer somehow. But like an Oliver Stone,
Yeah.
in his prime, I think would have been a good guy. But I don't think he would redo it because he's like the other one's
Oh,
perfect.
actually, who I would choose? Catherine Bigelow.
Oh, okay, I can see that.
Hurt Locker and Zero Dark 30. I think
Yeah,
if I was
Point
going to
Break.
give a modern treatment, I would give it to her.
Sure, I'd be okay with that. I'd be okay with that. All right, that's gonna wrap it up for this. Let's go to our top five war films pre 1980. Uh, we do Snake on this, right? Is that how we usually do this?
I think so.
Yeah. All right, go
This
for it.
was, by the way, this was hard going
This is really hard.
pre 1980 because there's so many good war films more like very recently.
Yeah. And I also want to
Um,
preface before I say my list that I also felt really underqualified to make a very good list because I feel like I needed to watch all these movies again to really come through this list. But there's some good ones I knocked off. This is one of the tougher lists.
I do not disagree that I also do not feel like an expert, but it reminds me that there's some I want to go back and rewatch. And
Yeah.
also,
My methodology too, just for the audience to know, I try to combine both accolades along with critical reception, along with my own experience with it. This isn't just purely my experience. I try and kind of had a hybrid of these because I've seen all the movies at least once, but some of these again, I would like to see them again because it's again to really rank them properly. But
okay.
yeah,
You want me to go first?
yeah, go first. Number five.
It would not be a list of mine without a nod to the French slash foreign language film. It's got English in it too, but also has others. I saw this a long time ago in college. The Battle of Algiers,
Yeah,
uh, and sort of about the Algerian revolution trying to overthrow the French who had just left Vietnam. It's really brutal and really good and topical and like just a pretty, I think, intense and amazing look at Africa as they began to try to throw off their not began, but like
yeah.
were in the process of really throwing off colonizers. Is really good.
Yeah, my number five and kind of like yours, mine would not be a list if I didn't include the great John Ford in my list
That's right.
and John Wayne as well. And so I went with They Were Expendables. Again, a film I definitely want to watch again, but I I think John Ford, he did two things well, and that's westerns and military films, and he definitely holds a piece of my heart. So I wanted to make sure one of his films got on my list. So I made They Were Expendables, number five. That's a World War II movie, and number four, I went with probably the most critically acclaimed war time film of all time. It won like 8 Oscars, I believe. And it was pretty solid. I remember watching it, well paced, but yet Best Years of Our Lives. I don't know if you've seen that one. That's also a World War II film, I believe.
I don't think I have.
But that's a really solid film. We can definitely watch that one again. But yeah, again, that one's a combination of like that's literally probably one of the most acclaimed films, war films, and cleaned up at the Oscars. But it's good. It's one of those that's like, all right, yeah, this one's solid. This one's solid. So want to give a shout out to that one.
Okay.
So number four for you.
Number four for me, I've been struggling going back and forth. I'm gonna go The Great Escape,
Oh,
uh,
nice. Yeah,
which it's a classic. I love that film.
yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Um,
iconic. A very
yeah,
iconic scene in that one. It's
for
another one
sure.
I want to watch. I just watched it not that long ago, but I want to watch it again. Like,
Yeah, it's one of those ones from my childhood I remember watching. Probably like I didn't watch a ton of movies when I was a kid, and that one was probably pushing the limits of whether I was old enough to watch
yeah,
it, and
that
just think
one
this is
that one
cool.
always has the it's in the Oscar scenes, like the montages,
Yeah, for
him
sure.
riding the bike over the hills. Yeah.
So I love Great Escape. And then number three for me is MASH,
Oh, nice.
which is both a great film, really like the comedy, bringing like comedy to war.
Yeah.
I thought was a really nice touch, and then also for the fact that it ended up spawning such like an important show in American history.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, actually, my MASH was exactly my third one for the same exact reason. I think cultural significance. It actually really is a good movie. I've read the
Yeah,
script,
Donald Sutherland's
um,
amazing.
and it's a really well made film. This launched Robert Altman into really like that next stratosphere for him, and it really is just like, again, like the different type of a war film that we hadn't seen before, and it was really well made. And then my number two, I went with Patton. And Patton is one of the earlier films that I ever saw. My dad definitely showed it to us. I mean, I even did like a project with it. And so I always remember that Patton scene when he walks out and has that great speech. But this one is probably more on the personal side. I mean, I think it did pretty well in terms of accolades, but um, like I said, this one, like I remember maybe the most out of it. And I made a video out of it, used a lot of scenes from it. So it really just holds a place in my heart. So that's why that one's number two for me.
Nice. My two and one, I was kind of going back and forth between the two of them. I've mentioned them before. Two, pretty devotedly anti-war films. Number two for me is Apocalypse Now. Um, Coppola was on an unbelievable run. Um, and I feel like the performances in this Brando, Martin Sheen, Duvall, like career making performance. I mean, obviously Brando had already been big, but like the change for him, like going in a new direction and kind of
Yeah.
career makers for Duvall and Sheen, and just an excellent film.
Yeah, for sure.
Long and trippy at points, but that's part of what I like about it, just how sort of experimental it was. And then number one for me is Deer Hunter.
I knew it.
I know you. I know, and I know that I'm an outlier for a lot of people. Also long. Um,
Well, yeah, I mean, let's be clear. That one won multiple Oscars and is
yeah,
on many lists. It's high on some of the lists that I saw. So I know I'm on the other side.
me,
Um, it's just a tough film, but yeah.
I get the reasons why people don't feel about it the way I do. Like for all of the reasons that I was just complaining about the bridge
It's a powerful film. Don't get me
on
wrong.
River Kwai, like
There's a lot of powerful scenes in it.
yeah,
It's just it's not a film. It's like, what are you doing on a Friday night? Hey, let's watch Deer Hunter. Like it's just not that type of film.
for sure. Um,
Uh, yeah,
so
I mean,
but
oh,
yeah,
go ahead. Did you have anything more
no,
to
I was
say?
just gonna say like just the performances in it. Again, the scenery both in Pittsburgh and then in Vietnam. It's I don't know, I like it. So that's it. Deer Hunter.
Yeah, and that one obviously has huge historical significance. One of the first films that really dealt with, PTSD and post-war, acclamation. I mean, very, very powerful film. My number one was your number two, Apocalypse Now. I think, to me, especially before 1980, I think when you think of a war film, I think this is the type of film that is more direct about a war. Now, I think the 80s are like the heydays of the 80s and the 90s, I think are the heydays of war films because I think we're separated from Vietnam enough. So you start getting, Platoon and
Yeah.
uh even like Top Gun, you get all these different First
You're
Blood.
able to like be like celebratory and nationalistic again in a way
It
that you've
becomes more of an
often
action. Yeah, the war movies start becoming more action films,
yeah.
and then some of them combine action and drama. But I think again, you start adding them better soundtracks. You start adding better cinematography, and so you really kind of take and more camera techniques again, like Platoon. That's got the slow motion, the music, all like it's more. People are bringing all the tool sets together, and like you're saying, different looks on war. You have some pro-war, you have some anti-war, you got a lot of different outliers. But the 70s are still very kind of cut and dry. This is what a war film is, and then the 90s, you got a bunch of different types,
Yeah.
to include, Saving Private Ryan, which of course has one of the greatest war scenes of all time with the D-Day invasion. But yeah, good list, good list. So next week we're gonna watch Stalag 17, also a war film. But this is directed by Billy Wilder. Billy Wilder's are, I'd have to think, but he might be on the Rushmore of directors. Has a lot of great films that he's made, and this is one I hadn't seen, but it's also highly acclaimed and definitely want to check it out. And so that's why we're gonna watch it. You can find it on Roku or Tubi. That'll be with ads, but you can still watch it for free. And then William Holden also is the star of this one, and so looking forward to this one. But thanks a lot, Drew. If you haven't checked our last episode, Sons of Katie Elder, it's out now. Um, but yeah, we like the response we're getting with this podcast, and so we're definitely gonna keep trying to do this. And yeah, thank you guys for joining in. Please make sure you like, share, subscribe. And with that is a cut. Thanks, guys.